Absolutely. Welcome everybody to session 29 of Beers with Engineers. It's amazing to see such a great crowd here. Thank you so much for coming to join us. Really excited about what we have to talk about today. As always, we have to start off with the safe harbor statement because some of the things that we may talk about today may not roll out exactly as we discuss them because they are, in this particular case, we're in a controlled go-to-market scenario. So things may change as we get to that. So everything is a forward-looking statement, and keep that in mind as we go through it. So why are we here, right? We always keep things loose and have a very informal agenda. Those of you who've joined us before know we're all about the community and, having an open conversation, right? So this is your time. Please don't hesitate to jump up and ask questions. The whole goal of why Will and I started this process was to talk about building a community around the intersection of ServiceNow and cloud native technologies. And one of those cloud native technologies is, APIs and those communications. So I'm super excited to have Nick to talk about that today. So who are we? My name is Mike Gallagher. I'm an ITOM presale specialist here at ServiceNow. I always talk about I should probably update that because it's getting closer to 30 years now. But yeah, I've been in tech for a long time. I always joke that I have an invisible propeller. The Mohawk hides it, and I love to do all things nerdy. I love to play with ITOM. I love to mess around with my Kubernetes home lab. I'm very interested in technology and how we use it intelligently to solve business problems. And on my personal time, I spend a lot of time with my family. I have four amazing kids. I train Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu as much as I possibly can, and I play a whole ton of board games. And today I am drinking the Big Bad Baptist Breakfast Baptist edition. It is an imperial stout that's aged in a whiskey barrel with maple syrup, coffee, and cocoa and salt. So really excited. Should be very tasty. Will, over to you.
Thanks, Mike. Hi, everyone. I'm Will Hallam. I'm a solution consultant at ServiceNow, specializing in ITOM. I've been doing technology for like 3 decades. Right now, focusing on ITOM, IT operations management stuff, really about automating all aspects of that with a particular focus on public and private cloud. Do like playing around with Kubernetes. It's a pretty cool ecosystem, kind of like a nerdy Lego set. Um, Love automating repetitive tasks and removing drudgery wherever I can. In my personal time, I like to hang out with my family a lot, um, play some pickup hockey and some video games. Today, I'll be enjoying a Carlsberg Danish Pilsner, which one of my sons brought me back from Greenland when he was there for work. He travels to Greenland and Antarctica to support the National Science Foundation work in those climates. And he brought me this official, I guess it's one of the staples when they're there. And so I will be enjoying this Carlsberg for today's session. And so we're really fortunate to have a guest speaker here this month, Nick Ryan from the product team. Nick, if you want to do a little intro, and then Nick's here to talk about API insights. So Nick, you can just do your intro, and I'll release the share, and you can have at it.
Yeah, sounds good. Thanks for having me, guys. So yeah, I'm Nick Ryan. I'm a product manager in the data foundations team. I used to have a cool job like Mike and Will and being an ITOM SE. But the last few years been on the product side and working on bringing APIs more into the mainstream within CMDB and how to interact with that data and whatnot. I'm based down in Houston, and so I'm drinking you probably can't see that very well. It's can't turn the background off. it's a Yellow Rose Smash IPA made in Magnolia, Texas, just north of Houston here.
Oh, nice.
Yellow Rose, obviously fitting for Texas.
Mhm. Awesome.
Good
You guys
choice.
don't have everybody like slamming the chat like what their beer is today, just to make sure everybody's actually drinking a beer.
That's a good idea, man.
That is
We
a
might
good
have to
idea.
steal that.
Do feel
Yeah.
free. They might have to use the Q&A, but because I think the chat, like with webinar format, the chat is limited to the
Yeah.
panelists. But
Mhm.
do if you're enjoying a beverage and would like to share recommendations, do feel free to do so coming off mute or in the Q&A.
Yeah, cool. All right, well, I'm gonna hop into it. I'm gonna go over a couple things that we can go deep into whatever the group's interested in. But I'm gonna start out first with, I'm gonna go to the big screen, so if I'm looking away, I'm not really looking away from the group. The data model, which is the basis for API insights and the stuff we'll talk about today. So if you haven't seen it, it came out a little over a year ago, and there's some core components to it that is really this API construct and then the API component. There is a lot of other things surrounding it, but those two pieces are the main additions here. And you'll notice this is a suggested relationship. So some customers are just loading up component because they may just have an inventory of endpoints and not really know which ones go together to form an API. And so if we're talking about trying to define what an API is and how that might break down, we can use the ServiceNow example, really. And if you go to REST API Explorer, pick an API, right, like the CMDB instance API, that would be our top level API record. And then all of these resources for it, the different methods and paths and things, those are the components. And so that's really how we're thinking about constructing an API. And then as we expand into platforms that specialize in hosting APIs and managing APIs, things build out, right? So we have API components still here in the middle, but we start to get a lot of surrounding things, like maybe they're coming from a gateway, and maybe a specific gateway. And then those APIs in those gateways have concepts of front ends and back ends, right? The front ends are like the client-facing endpoints that a developer would call. That's really proxying to these back-end services that are fulfilling those requests. So I say all that because, as we are building out integrations, we're populating really the larger data model. But at the end of the day, the core is still going to be these two things in terms of, tracking for other use cases like ITOM or ITSM, having a CI that is being monitored, right? Something like 1,000 Eyes or Dynatrace or things like that, probably monitoring something that would be in this API component realm. So hopefully all of that makes sense. You can see it in the class manager. If you're a CMDB person that likes to go into class manager for some reason, and you see API, and then there's managed API under it. So the managed API is really, the differentiator there is that it has a dependency on the gateway class, so that API gateway class. And so we populate this managed API when we actually discover it from a management platform. And when we look more at the workspace, you'll see it even called management platform in terms of differentiating, where things come from. And then the component hierarchy has these front ends and back ends and some other things in here as well. So, and Will and Mike, you'll have to keep me honest if there's questions that come in. Just let me know and I can pause.
Yep. We'll holler at
I'll
you.
be monitoring it. All right, cool. So I'm going to give a quick spin through the workspace here, but then I also want to dive into an example of how we actually populate this data from one of the integrations and even talk about how we can tweak that integration if we need to. So look at some common things like maybe the way we're defining authentication isn't how your organization is set up to authenticate to something. So how do we tweak that? We can go through an example of that. So this workspace, as I'm logged in here, comes actually with some new roles. There's a software architect and a software architect admin role. So I'm currently impersonating a user that's an architect admin, which gives me this settings tab here. Otherwise, everything's the same between the two roles. But there's just some basic search functionality here where we can just look through the inventory of APIs, see if there's something maybe we want to reuse for a project, or maybe I'm an enterprise architect and I have to run some lifecycle management activity on it, like deprecate it or something like that. And so you can pick a couple and we can compare them just as a side-by-side comparison. We also can request access potentially. So I say potentially because one of the settings is to specify a flow to actually fulfill that. Like, so when you submit a request to get access, it just creates a task record behind the scenes, a specific task record that we've made for these. And then somebody can come in and look at those requests, if they quote unquote own the API. And then you can choose to either grant access or reject access. And at that point, when this grant or reject is clicked, it actually kicks off this flow that's specified. But if out of the box, this is going to be empty, so there's not a flow that we deliver because there's endless amounts of things you can do in one of those things. But it's pretty simple. If I look at that one that I have, this actually, there's going to be a template of this, so that has all the inputs pre-populated as a starting point. So it takes basically the request record, and then, what if it was granted or rejected the access at the end of the day. And then, this is simply just updating that task record. But at this point, you could send emails to people. You could, reach back out to the originating platform where it came from and actually, create tokens and things if you had that type of access to it. So not to go into a whole integration hub kind of talk and demo here, but these are the types of things that you could do in that case. And so we have intentions to continue to build out like flows that make sense to attach to API activities. Again, something like deprecating an API, maybe you want to reach out to all the users of the API, kick off deprecation activities for infrastructure people and so on. Just going back to this, so there's some flows here to address some missing data highlights that we're making. So, there's always the topic of, hey, we need the business context around our CIs. I don't know that this is really unique to APIs at all. ITOM obviously has a lot of mapping functionality, tag-based mapping, top-down mapping, dynamic mapping. What this is saying is that there's APIs that are not connected to an app service that's also connected to a business app. So if you click in here, you see that list, you can pick one or multiple of these APIs, click on this create relationship, which actually doesn't create a relationship. That actually comes and gives you a list of app services that are related to a business app. So now if you click the create relationship, it actually will create that relationship of depends on, used by, between an API and this app service. So at the end of the day, what you get if we look into one of these, at the very bottom of the details, and we can go into the details some more here in a bit, but you get that linkage in the map of this particular API to that app service up to the business app.
Nice.
So it's a lightweight kind of service mapping, I guess I'd say. We are actually adding this button here. It's not in the control go-to-market version, but we're adding this button here so that it'll actually bring up a page that shows you all the app service relationships that this API has, and it'll let you add or remove them at this point as well. So, and it's specific to app services, so we're not doing anything with all these other ones. It's strictly almost like being able to define how the apps integrate between one another. And I know some folks are using tagging strategies to do this automatically, to connect these things. So that's another way of automating it. But if you have folks that are into updating that manually, there's a mechanism here to do that. And so just one last thing that I'll touch on in terms of the details, because most of these other things on this page are related to, hey, is there a vulnerability that's, the security vulnerability response package is tracking? Is there alerts in ITOM? Are there changes, things like that on any of these CIs? Because everything on this page, this top level construct is a CI. All of these components are CIs. If anything has activity going on, we're trying to surface it within this experience here. But we also, as part of the integrations, are trying to pull a daily snapshot of usage. So basically like requests over like the last 24 hours and then averaging that out. And then we can break it down by version of the API. So this one has 3 different versions. And so we've tried to break that down and give visibility into that. And that's really one of the big things that we've heard from customers. So, there's a lot of places where this data exists. If I look at, really one little slide here, we're starting down here in this gateway arena, but, we have roadmap to expand into a lot of these other areas. And typically these are very much like point solutions where not everybody has access to them, where there's really stakeholders that want and need to understand the landscape of APIs out there, whether that's for compliance reasons, security reasons, operations reasons, so on, right? There's just a lot of people that typically wouldn't have access to these solutions. So bringing it into ServiceNow can break down those silos for you. So with that, if there's not any questions, I was gonna get into one of the integrations that we have and just kind of walk through an example of how to tweak it potentially.
There's one question in the Q&A. Durga is asking if there's a timeline to support Apogee. I think you had said Apogee, the SaaS Apogee is supported, and that the on-prem Apogee is in the plans. Is that correct?
Yes, you got it, Will. So Apogee X, the SaaS version, is something we support today. Had a really good design partner on that, who may or may not be on the call. And then, yeah, we do have plans or ambitions to support like Apogee Edge and the on-prem flavors. I'll say that we are looking for design partners for that, because getting a lab for that stuff is proven over the last year to be a little challenging with our friends at Google.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if anybody's interested in helping us out with that, that would be certainly welcome. But yeah, Apogee X is out there today.
Let's see. So Dan is asking, for managing the app service relationships, is it just going to write a relationship to the CMDB rel CI table? And will it depend on what type of app service it's being related to?
Yeah, it's just writing to the rel CI table. Yeah, that's exactly. And what we're looking at to populate that list is the top level app service in the app service hierarchy. So regardless if you got like discovered or tag based or whatever, they'll all roll up to what we're looking for.
Awesome. That's it for the Q&A. I'm just curious, when you mentioned it's in controlled GTM now, when are you targeting for GA?
We're looking at it in the Yokohama timeframe to come out with the next release effectively and doing a GA at that point. For now, it's looking like it's probably going to be like a standalone SKU until ITOM does a rev of their SKUs some point maybe in 2025, at which point we would ideally roll into those so that it's easier for anybody that has ITOM like visibility to also get this.
Is the is like the SU calculation still in the works as far as how you would title it? Or
yeah, I think we were pretty set on it, and then I've seen it change twice this week. So I'll just say that
So
it's still kind of in the works.
Right. Reminder, forward-looking statements. Forward-looking statements.
Safe harbor applies.
Yep.
That's right, safe harbor.
That was one of the things we were looking at, right? Is from a cloud ingestion, right? From a resource from the service graph connectors for AWS and GCP is really what the difference between the functionality we get through those versus this specifically. And then like the part you were just talking about is eventually if this rolls into our normal SU cost, it's easier for us to then adopt it rather than having to go through a whole nother SKU and a whole nother level of procurement of a new product and a new pricing thing. And so for us, that's kind of a deal killer of getting to use this stuff. So I definitely would wonder kind of what additional functionality this has rather than the service graph connectors or just ITOM in general. And then also the quicker you guys can roll this into the ITOM SU cost, probably the easier a lot of us bigger enterprises will have the ability to adopt it without having to go through some other level of procurement of this specifically. So.
Yep, no, it's a fair point, Dave, and I agree. It's the most frictionless. Although it's been interesting because some customers have actually preferred that it was standalone because sometimes they have these like mega custom SKUs that they don't want to rework the whole thing, even for a new rev of like ITOM or any changes to it. So, but I think by large part, you're right. The easiest way is, a natural.
For us, it is because they keep progressing
to
what new resource types have SU licensing implications because they keep adding databases and other things to that. So we're used to that path of now this costs money or this new thing is in this thing that has an SU cost and whatever that SU conversion rate is. So, but yeah, awesome.
Yeah.
I think
that's exactly what we're trying to do is like, do that with the API class. And I, just to be clear, it's this one over here, not these. So we're talking about this becoming an SU consumer when it's populated by obviously one of our mechanisms.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. And actually,
Cool.
Durga put a great link in the Q&A about the subscription unit overview for API Insights.
Oh yeah, is there one? That's good.
Mm-hmm.
Have to see if it's still accurate.
Right. Yeah, it says it's at a 1 to 10 subscription unit ratio.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think that's what they.
From our contract. We are going through that renewal, so we are actually considering that. So
Yeah, cool.
Excellent.
All right. Yeah. Any other things to touch on?
Let's see. Any
Okay.
plans on connecting the API CIs to the digital integrations / interfaces?
Yeah, there's two things to that. It's a good question because it's been coming up a lot. And today, like one of the things we have actually here is like this missing designs is actually, if you go through that, it's actually trying to do exactly that. If you click on some of these and then here, these are digital interface records. Again, these are digital interface records that have the business app populated, but I was actually talking with one of my counterparts and who works on digital integration management and the things they're doing there, which has some synergies to some of the stuff we're doing with the data model in terms of adding in like excuse me, API products, which is effectively like a bundle of APIs, and how that could also represent and link to an integration record. So they're thinking about how to represent an integration, like the digital integration as a CI, because today it's not, right? So it's not really a lot you can do with it, right? For incident problem change, ITOM, security, anything else. So I know they're thinking about how to improve that and also be able to potentially link it to what the real integration is, whether that's a bundle of APIs, whether that's like some TIBCO middleware or SAP or whatever it might be. I don't know that we've solved that problem yet, but this is one way of linking the APIs to the digital interfaces. It's not automated. I don't know that there's a lot that's discoverable around that we found yet that lets that link up.
Let's see. Another question or suggestion, perhaps, regarding the functionality of mapping the APIs to app services. What about the possibility of having it, if it's a tag-based service, just having it add a key value to the key value table so that it would just automatically get pulled in?
Yep, and so that's all gonna be done by the February timeframe. So
Nice.
one of the strange things about the CMDB is the key value table isn't on like the base CMDB CI class, so it's not like inherited by everything like you would think it would be.
Right.
We have to kind of go back and add it to everything, but actually in the latest class model update, it's added to as a related list to say the APIs and API components.
One other question / comment. Soren says, there's a Grand Canyon sized gap, which is the linkage from the CMDB side of APIs and the CSDM side of APIs. What are the plans to kind of bridge that gap and bring the two sides together?
If I could, I'm thankful I don't know that much about CSDM. You know, what I know about CSDM is that things are supposed to go through an app service. And Soren, yeah, I know there's a lot to be automated there, hopefully, one day. I don't know when that will be. I think if also in the latest version of the class model app, you'll see there's a lot of new service types now under the application service hierarchy. So yeah. Yeah.
Man, we've got an inquisitive group this month. Soren is lobbying for more positive stats on the workspace and KPIs.
Yeah.
He says,
Yeah, no,
he says
Soren,
Nick
we're gonna
knows
make-
about this.
Yeah, I do. And it's a great point. We are going to add like an analytics tab here and give you some slicing and dicing options, maybe via some of the PA breakdowns and things like that, so you can do.
For the record,
do
I
all your
gave him
Python.
pointers.
Yeah, you gave me your list.
I gave him
I'm taking it
examples.
serious.
Copy. There's no shame in it. Load it up.
I am. That's where I'm going to start at, Soren. Don't you worry. That is going to happen. I appreciate your collaboration on all of this over.
Every
over
tile
time.
that
It's been
says
great.
missing, we look at it and we read it and it means more work, more work, more work. Where's the positive reinforcement? We need a bit of that, some green bar charts and donuts.
Yeah. Well, if you make all these zeros, it'll turn bluish green. I don't know what color that
Yeah,
is.
but I ask you, when they are all zero, then what? And what's going to happen? Where's the magic?
Oh, then you
I have
just,
nothing to
then
do. I can
everything-
retire, probably.
That's it. That's it. The magic just will happen at that point.
No, but seriously speaking, and I want to see it because I want to kind of wake up the beer crowding. And I have no beer, God damn it! I should get one. So next time I'll get better
Oh,
prepared. Some Canadian stuff,
Wow.
but we build APIs out of groups that are aligned with business units, right? And some APIs are shared, some are dedicated, all that lovely things. Having those metrics, it's important because we understand it kind of ties up with their velocity. It creates awareness between one group and the other when some is share and they don't reinvent the wheel. They don't talk a lot amongst themselves. They just code. You guys know how you are, right? Not that I never been a developer in my life, but there's analytics that have to come through for management, for release management, for a lot of things. I don't have to explain. You know what I'm after, right? Just expressing what is missing to make the integrity of the data model better, it's okay, but it's okay for ServiceNow. There's got to be something that's good for us too, on a positive path and a negative path. So I'm sure you'll get ideas. You know I'm not gonna let you go. Texas or not, I'm coming after you, buddy.
Man. I'm telling you, one of these days when I'm up there visiting my in-laws, I'm going to come by and see you.
Okay, we'll have my kind of beers then.
Yeah, there you go. There you go.
Let's see. Troy's asking if the that functionality you mentioned for GA with the key value table, is that going to be on Xanadu only, or will that go back to Washington at that point?
Yeah, I mean, we're always trying to, I know not every new product does this, but I've been trying to have my team focus on staying N-2 compliance. So the data model part is already out there in whatever the class model app, 1.63 or 6.4 or something like that. But in terms of the integrations to populate that, it'll be in the like the February, March-ish time frame. And yeah, that'll go back to Washington at least.
So this next question is right solidly in my wheelhouse. Have we heard of HL7 integrations, mostly in healthcare, looking for someone who has a CI handle on the configuration/integrations? So an HL7 integration is sort of like an API on steroids with very specific like capabilities around like electronic health records and components like that. I'm gonna assume, Nick, that this is not there yet.
Yeah, there's a lot we're going to focus on in 25 around more of terming it governance, not so much compliance for a specific reason, but trying to help facilitate some of these more industry or regionally specific things, like DORA in Europe, PCI here in the States, healthcare regulations, fintech regulations. There's lots of them. We'll probably look to partner some with like the IRM business unit on some of that, do some of it ourselves.
Yep, that's an interesting one.
So, yeah, we're not there.
Because I worked at a teleradiologist company for a few years and we did HL7. So it's interesting to think of it. I didn't really think of it exactly as like an API piece, but it really is. So
yeah, I look at it as an API with like expanded data attributes from a CMDB perspective, right?
Yep.
Around like what the capabilities are and how it processes. So
Yep.
I
'Cause that's
would
what we did.
see.
Yeah. Or go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, I was gonna say, because we would pull the records in, right, from HL7 standpoint, merge those with the modality, kind of scans the images, right, and then
Mhm.
put that on the board for whatever the reads were and prioritize it and stuff. But yeah, but it is interesting. I hadn't really thought of it in that way, but it's definitely kind of a API driven piece. So yeah.
Yeah. So I think the answer is I don't know that we have a solid answer for that yet, but I think this is a step in the right direction that could be expanded upon to eventually include the HL7 specific components that are necessary for tracking.
Yeah, and I know that the security team's also working on some of or we're collaborating on some of the updates around SBOM for some things they're doing as well. So yeah, Mike, I might ping you on this because I'm not that familiar with it. So
Happy to.
Yeah, thanks for bringing that up though.
Yep.
Let's see. So Durga just had a comment that in some scenarios, APIs fit in the build domain on CSDM, on the CSDM side, which, yep, that's,
Yep.
yep.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. One of the things we're working on for early in the year is a push integration, because we have some customers that at the end of their CI/CD pipeline want to push in an open API or an async API spec.
Nice.
We're going to facilitate that. I don't know what we're going to do with that data yet. It's just going to be kind of the raw spec in a table, but we are going to provide that and think about what the proper thing to do with it is. Like, do we parse it apart and make CIs? Do we parse it apart and make digital interface records? Do we do something in that build domain?
Yeah, that's interesting. My brain immediately goes to the tie-in to RapDev's now.yaml capability and the definition of those software components and the tag-based maps at the same time, kind of like through that CI/CD pipeline process. So uh, that's an interesting capability to think about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When I
Trying to make it
was
easy
at
on onboard stuff.
Yep.
when I was a customer, our big API provider was MuleSoft, and I don't recall having seen Mule mentioned anywhere in any of the API Insights stuff. Are there any plans to kind of tackle discovering a customer's MuleSoft API
Yeah.
landscape?
Yeah, definitely. It's been a pretty popular one. There's just some co-opetition things we're working through with them, like in terms of getting labs and things as well. So definitely something we're targeting for 2025 as well to
Awesome.
have an integration with. Yeah.
Here's a
And
question.
we're actually probably. I was
Sorry,
just
go
gonna
ahead.
say quickly on that. We're probably gonna add a new hierarchy into the CMDB as well for things like that, like a platform hierarchy,
Yep.
where they would be like, that would be an integration platform, like them, Workato, Boomi, so on. But then other things that could go into the top level would be like ServiceNow as a platform.
Right.
Yeah. I like it.
Question from Pamela. New to ServiceNow, is there any collaboration with other industry models around API aligned to things like Accord, BizBox, ... Neither of those names ring a bell for me, so hopefully somebody.
I
I
just
mean,
did a
we're
little
not.
Googling. Go ahead.
Yeah. No, I mean, we don't have anything like, I would say, industry specific, even like TM forum, for telcos and stuff. Most of what we're doing is a little more generic around, like I say, like open API specs and async API, for event driven stuff. yeah, we haven't quite gotten into that, but definitely would be if you got some like use cases and things where that's like, you know, would be valuable. Definitely open to understanding more.
Well, and that being said, in theory, once you've got API insights on your instance, you could write your own, you could create your own integration with iHub ETL. And as long as you populated the table correctly, then API insights could read that data, right?
Yeah, for sure.
So
I mean, all of this stuff that's in here is driven from just those classes that I mentioned before. Like,
okay.
the
So I
stuff
mean,
in
the
the
bones are
API
going
and
to
API
be there,
components.
and then it's just kind of building up the content.
Correct.
Yeah.
A couple more questions in the Q&A. Michael's asking about Broadcom API gateway. He says they currently use that. He's just wondering if that's on the radar.
Yeah, Michael, you're now the second person I've heard say that. So maybe I'll start looking into it a little bit more. I wouldn't say it's been like something that we've heard a lot, but yeah, good to know that more usage out there. Yeah, I mean, there's some other platforms that we've seen people use, but not heavily. Also, like Informatica, right, which has always been an ETL tool, but has a lot of API capabilities and process automation and things. Akamai is really getting into APIs a lot more. The
Let's
list is
see.
long for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, so Pamela's just kind of comment was just that some core APIs are being based around information models aligned to insurance object defined by Accord, and I don't know how to pronounce CLEIDIS. So she was just curious.
Pledis. Yeah, it's Pledis. It's just
Pledis,
a
okay.
way of exchanging data between financial industries. So
Okay.
we
Okay.
kind of build our information models, but we're aligning information objects to those. Now, I'm new to ServiceNow, so I'm still connecting the dots. So, okay. All right.
Yeah, I mean, I think those are certainly areas we'll expand into. Like I say, I mean, I'm pretty familiar with the TM Forum kind of standards around that telco uses. So yeah, I'm sure like the insurance and financial industries and healthcare all kind of have their own little flavors of those that we'll get to.
All right. I think we've exhausted the Q&A for the moment. Oh, no, Durga.
Can I ask it verbally?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah.
Nick, when is the service graph for Apigee, the new one? It's November. It was a mini release or something.
That was like for Service Graph Central, so that it would show. Remember how you
they would
couldn't
just
see
show
it in the
yeah.
workspace?
Okay.
Yeah,
So it's not the
that's-
connector itself, it's the fact that it'll show up in the selectors. Okay.
Yeah.
We got that then.
We're working on pulling the update that we're working on for our Apigee is like pulling in the products and applications so we can pull in like connect the dots to who has access, as well as getting those usage.
Is that on the
snapshots.
whiteboard or it's ready for?
No. It's in development right now, so it's in the works.
We'll take it. Alpha, beta, whatever.
Is there any timeline, Nick, on the Apigee thing, when we can expect that?
On the update, so like there's one out there today, but then the update will be more like probably the March timeframe, February-March timeframe. I'm gonna guess March.
Does this pull in the scripted REST APIs and scripted SOAP APIs from ServiceNow?
So that's a good call, Dave. So that is something that will be in the March release. I mean, I have it working in this version, but yeah, we're would be curious on your feedback on it, but we're working on, I would say working on, it's already there, in the dev is done, but we just won't have it released until we come out with this whole next release, where we're letting you pick, do you want ServiceNow, APIs,
Oh, nice.
scripted REST, scripted SOAP, do you want custom, right? We check for activity. Here we are making you pick them though. We're not going to bring in just everything because there's too many, and we know
Yeah.
some of them are meaningful, so you have to pick the ones that you want.
That's nice because we have, I mean, some critical ones that we've customized, but some kind of out of the box ones too. And so it'd be nice to have those and tied in. So awesome.
I will say one thing on that really quickly is because part of what customers want to know is like, hey, who's using some of these things, right? Even in ServiceNow. And in order for it to collect stats, you have to add it to this inclusion list. So just a heads up, if like we can obviously pull in the API and the resources and such, but we won't have any usage information unless you turn these things on. This is just usage info in general. This will actually track like who's making the requests. So if you've got your own, you'd have to add it to this list to get some of that.
Good to know.
Yeah, that's important. I have a lot of customers who've built their own scripted REST APIs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's see. Durga's asking for a little more context around the API endpoint discovered class.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not really a CI class, but it's meant to be more like a staging table. We had it there again because a lot of the security scanning type of tools, like no name or traceable or things like that, are very traffic based, and they have a lot of noise in them, I guess I'd say, lightly. And so the idea was, it's probably best to like put it into this kind of staging table and then do some sort of processing on it. As you see, like we were planning to use it for some integrations too, and then do some processing on it and then try to place it in the right spot based on how much we can clean it up. So that was the idea behind that table.
All right, quick, go into your like example before,
Yeah, I was just gonna
before
go
they hammer us with more
really
questions.
quick.
Right. Yeah. Right.
Yeah, no, those are all good. Those are all good. I was just gonna show you quick, like Kong Gateway is one of the integrations we have, and so like out of the box, it's got this credential type of a basic auth credential. We know nobody likes using basic auth, but they have a lot of options there, and we had to pick something to do out of the box. But what we've recently done, and I guess I'll just look at one of these actions here. What you see is it's pretty basic, right? It takes that connection alias, makes a REST call, right, to the base path. So what we did recently, customers like we enabled RBAC on the gateway, right? And we have like a key of sorts, and the key is actually just a header in the when you send in the request.
Yep.
So it doesn't really use one of our authentication types at all. And so what that looks like is just creating a different credential type. This happens to be an API key type, and so it's not basic auth. It's an API key credential with just that token that you get for the RBAC access. They obviously want to use a mid server too, so specific mid server there. this is all running on my laptop, how I tested it out. So that's why that looks funny as Docker internal. And then what we do on the actual actions that make the call is we just add one more step in there and then the header. So there's this get connection info step where we give it that same alias. And then what it does is it has this, the credential value there, which you don't actually see the value. But then we just added this to this header in there and passed in that credential value. So we didn't have to hard code it or anything like that. And when you actually go and look at the executions of it, it keeps that token value masked. So it's just a nice, still secure way of doing that. And, you know, you can, I guess my point about all that is you can tweak it to not, credential values all start up, and you can tweak these things pretty easily to conform to whatever authentication mechanism you need, even here, and token values start.
Yes.
So that was really all I wanted to say about that. I mean, you can, you know, I think what a lot of customers, they want us to do for sure, and we want to do it too, is stuff like this and provide some more options and flexibility. But I bring it up because, you know, it takes us a while sometimes to release a new update. And so in the interim, there are ways of certainly doing these things. And same with like the mappings. You know, I could open up IGTL here and go into the mappings for these things, and we could tweak how anything's set, right? If we don't like it, or we could add more from the payload or things like that. Or if you've got custom values that you want to store or capture somewhere.
So what are the current sources that we have, or, you know, API providers that we have out of the box?
Yeah.
Are they
so
all
here.
are they all Service Graph connector based? Is it basically just taking data from Service Graph connectors at this point?
Yeah, I mean, it's the same architecture, same pipeline.
What about discovery? So if I have AWS Discovery and it's discovering the API, the AWS API gateway, will that data tie in to API Insights, or is it specific or particular about needing to get the data, however it's flavored, coming in from SGAWS?
No, yeah, I mean, well, I've done POCs with a bunch of customers on just loading in spreadsheets, right? You know, old school.
Okay.
Or we've integrated with, you know, sometimes like with an Informatica or things. The only discovery pattern that does really anything in this space is the AWS API gateway one. And to be honest, it needs to be tweaked because it doesn't,
Okay.
it puts it into a gateway class. It puts the APIs into a gateway class.
Yep.
So I'm working with that team to get that updated.
Okay. But doable.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's not a huge bridge, I don't think.
Yeah.
I love the middle section here, right? The business contactee, ownership, and the design artifacts, right? That is, for most organizations, the dragon to chase, right? Who owns this? Who do I call when it does something bad or when it's broken? So it's always important. We get so focused on the tech here on this call, but it's always important to pause and think about the people in the process side of the house that our tech can't solve, right? So always be thinking about that as we're moving forward and implementing new stuff is, okay, how are we going to manage this from a people and process side of the house to ensure the data is actually usable in our day-to-day lives? So I leave you with that nugget.
Yeah, yeah, no, for sure. And trying to provide a way to make it as painless as possible. It's always painful addressing non-discoverable data in the CMDB, but try to
Yep.
make it easy. I do see a couple questions. Soren, I'm not sure what digital ML Ignite is. That's
An
news about
API
me. I
management
don't know what
portal,
that.
buddy.
Sorry.
It's what you're building.
Yeah, sounded like a cool conference to go to. Ben's asking about the API counted against iHub transactions. So yeah, there's nothing really in this. Like the integrations are immune to integration hub transactions, and then the APIs that we store in the CMDB itself aren't counted against anything integration hub related. It's all more subscription unit based. I'm gonna have to click on Soren's thing now.
Yeah. Yeah, I just went through and looked at that. Makes sense.
Yeah. I don't know, guys, if y'all have like someplace y'all publish like anything like this, I can share.
Yeah,
most
if
of
you
the
want to
deck,
send me a PDF, I have an automated wrap-up email that goes out to everybody who attended, and we can attach it to that.
Yeah. Okay.
What is the suggested
Yeah.
relationship to backend business logic, monolithic / microservice application?
Yeah, that's an interesting. I'm assuming there, like if I'm understanding you correct, it's kind of like we've got these backends, API backends, which are really, you know, delivered by some service, right? It might be a Lambda function, it might be a database, query, it could be anything.
Oh yeah.
You know, yeah, we didn't specifically connect those dots. It was hard to, we're trying to figure out if we can automate that in some way when we can, because sometimes we know like the Lambda function, right? So for AWS Gateway, the backend tells us the ARN for the Lambda function. Problem is it could be all kinds of other things like DynamoDB or whatever. Yeah, so I don't know that we have a suggested one there. To be honest, I can't say that I've thought about it. Like if you wanted to relate this back end to an actual CI that was doing it, yeah, I'm sure we could come up with one. I always have to run that stuff past Bodman and Scotland.
Yeah. But that's a good call out, right? Because ultimately, especially in the modern architecture, right, most of these APIs are being provided by a microservice of some kind, right? So if we have a tag-based service map of the microservice, then it should be fairly easy for us to represent that as, hey, this API backend is being provided by this particular microservice that's delivered by these underlying Kubernetes components. But I say fairly easy. That's my hand wavy simple answer, right?
Mike, there's
No,
a big problem with that though, because some knights on the call have tried that.
Mhm.
Typically, you use for that tag base the APM code that's in the APM table, and then that ties the leaf elements all the way to the top, and the diagram looks like crap because it doesn't flow through the layers. It flows directly through the top.
Yeah, so actually we did on Beers with Engineers the whole session on how to
I
make
know you
those
did. I know
tag-based
your
service
episodes
maps
by
better.
heart. I'm struggling with that tag remediation things, and if you find me
Yep.
who that makes that thing, because they show how to audit it, but they didn't show how to remediate it, and this all the scripts are missing unless you guys want to build them and make them available.
I think we showed some.
Yeah, for some Kubernetes, but try
Yeah.
a hodgepodge of everything: load balancers,
Right.
VMs, 3
See, that's
clouds, and
That's where we draw the line.
yeah, okay.
Yeah, I heard. Oh, I mean, we definitely do some of those pieces, but at the end of the day, right, the organization is writing the kind of like the most broad answers to give you kind of directional where to go. And then because we understand that the vast majority of customers have a very uh, non-homogeneous environment, right? We leave it to customers to
You
take
sound like the
kind of
lawyer now. Be the
right, yeah,
engineer,
our
buddy.
structural examples and then make them real for you,
Practical
right?
examples will allow any engineer to transpose that into their own mindset. Having nothing
Correct.
is like you're pushing me out of the airplane without a parachute and say, you're going to learn how to fly before you hit the ground. You'll
Yeah,
figure
that's not
out
a
on
good
your
plan.
own.
Yeah, right. No, that's not a good plan. I agree
Not
with
a
you
good
there.
plan. But the tag governance, it's a big bump in the road because a lot of the stuff that we do is based on tagging, and we think,
Mm-hmm.
and that in itself takes a lot of effort, but then you don't realize the value out of it because the tag governance still all over the place. And if the mechanic of it can happen inside ServiceNow and then power the tag-based service mapping,
Mm-hmm.
that that will be useful, right? But now it's not. It's done outside the ServiceNow. It's collected in ServiceNow, and then ServiceNow creates all those dependency maps and service maps that look like whatever spaghetti incident.
Mm-hmm.
So there's probably a version 2 of the tag governance with somebody that's like Nick representing that product team and understand what their roadmap is. I would love to grill one live.
We
You
might
don't
be
like
able
the
to put that
birthday cake
together.
that comes out of the tag base map? Flat birthday cake with one candle.
Yep.
Right. Yeah.
Grilling with engineers.
Right.
Yeah, why
Hey, I
not
got you,
pranking the
bro.
barbecue if you have the beers?
Yep.
Hey, I can bring the brisket.
Excellent.
Nick, is there any concept behind, because in our space the APIs are published for various internal and external parties or partners, clients, where they subscribe to that API and they'll start consuming that API. So is there anything that in the model that can be the subscription concept or the consuming concept can be represented?
Yeah, there's a couple things, and I guess it doesn't show up on this, but off of the gate, there's this is where you really can't hold me to it because this is very likely to change. I'll show you kind of what we're working on. So there's like this product consumer application. So there's an API consumer table already out there. It's not a CI class, but we already are pulling in that stuff. We're looking to link it through so that we ultimately populate this table, which also already exists out there that we got to add some things to. But this is meant to represent, who basically an API and who has access to it, and like when it was last used and so on. Basically, like the token metadata without actually having the token in there because we don't need it. But this table tries to, it has an attribute on it for like internal or external, and I think the default is unknown. But there is an attribute to try to track the consumer here and denote if it's internal or external. I
So
haven't seen a
is this
good
model
way of
is
pulling
already
that from the platforms.
is this already sorry is this model is already baked into the current version?
No, so the ones in green, I mean, these tables exist where it says add. Those are things that we're working to get added. The yellow tables are things that we're adding.
Okay.
And to be clear, Nick said at the beginning of that, all of this is subject to change. So
Yeah, I mean, I was just on a lengthy call with Scott Lem right before this about that data model and how it plays with other things that he has going on and whatnot. So yeah,
Mhm.
subject to change. But directionally, you know, we're going to be collecting that data one way or the other. It's just where it ends up being and exactly what the tables are called and all that.
Yep. I realize we're a little bit over time. It's totally okay. I appreciate you guys hanging out and chatting with us longer. I want to be cognizant of everyone's time. Nick, was there anything specific that you wanted to show that you didn't get to yet?
Yeah, I just was hoping to give everybody a little flavor of it and what the intention is, and maybe some ways of interacting with it and populating that data model. You know, if you need to tweak some things, it's not the end of the world, and you know, we're not against it, and be done.
Yeah,
So no, thanks for having me on, guys.
appreciate it. Any other specific questions for Nick?
Is there anything that we can push to prioritize this in the product line to get it as possible?
Yeah, I mean, just Dirk, just send me what you look. I'm a big proponent of using customer feedback to justify what I'm doing. So
Yep.
and my engineering team takes that the best way, and my management has no argument against it. So you know, the prioritization aspect is really I guess it's two things. One, you know, we're going to continue to focus on building more and more integrations and enhancing the stuff we got. So that's one side. And so, you know, the needs around that are always welcome for feedback. And then the other side is like how to interact with that data, what attributes may be missing that, you know, maybe that, you know, are available somewhere, you know, how best to make the most of that data once it is in the platform. So those are really the two things we're focused on. So if there's more thoughts on that, you know, I'm fortunate. My group, they're all based out of Dublin. So thankfully I get to go a couple times a year. I haven't been over St. Patrick's Day yet though, but you know, we're in a continuous planning cycle, and so we'll be releasing a lot more frequently than what we have been so far. Like where we did like basically like a 6-month one on this one, but hopefully we'll be releasing more on like a quarterly basis. So yeah, definitely hit me up with your needs around this stuff, and happy to scope it out.
So Nick, for the service graph connectors, like with Takwa and Vivob and all those guys, did they stay under like Nav and under CMDB? Because I know like the cloud, right? So AWS and GCP got moved under Shri. So are they still under Nav, and is that who still owns the non-cloud service graph connectors?
Yep,
Okay.
that's right.
I like all those guys and ladies. So some smart people that are pretty awesome on that team. So
Well, some of like 4 or 5 of them went into Shree's team, the ones that were mainly supporting those cloud connectors. So.
okay. We knew some things got merged. We thought all the people were moving, but talking to Vivob and Takwa, it seemed like they stayed under Navin. So it was just an interesting thing of what, like you're saying, who got moved and then what moved under Shri. So, yep.
Yeah, the majority stayed, and then they're going to get backfilled. So we didn't really lose the head count. They just,
yeah,
the
I
people
would
that
just
were
say
doing
that
it got moved.
we lost access to them because, I mean, Takwa and Vivob both knew this stuff insanely well. So some transition and bumps of trying to work through some of the issues that we have. So, yep.
Awesome. Appreciate everybody's time. Appreciate everybody joining us today. We'll do kind of final wrap up, and then we'll do our usual and open it up for the broader questions. Will, go ahead.
Yeah, so this this is our final session for 2024. Figure at the end of December, probably won't be a lot of people around. And then ServiceNow has something called sales kickoff in late January that would kind of get in the way of our normally scheduled sessions. So our upcoming session is February 20th, and we're planning on looking at a fairly new app that came out called Cloud License Estimator. Essentially kind of a much lighter weight way to get counts of what's out in your clouds, to drive either adoption or, you know, license right sizing, etc. So that's what we're planning to look at in February. I'm gonna have to fix that before we send that out. February 25, not 24. So yeah, as always, you'll get, you know, plenty of automated invites, etc. And just a quick shout out. Don't forget, we've got a website that there'll be a reminder of that in the wrap up email as well. We've got a kind of a one-stop shop microsite that, if you remember that, you can always have the latest access to the latest videos and the latest you know, Zoom invite for the for the upcoming session. Yeah, so wrap up is that wraps up the wrap up. So now we'll turn off the recording and open it up to any other queries.
Durga was saying you're not really going to go back 10 months in time for your next session.